Well, let's get started. So thank you everybody for joining our Bell Ringer focused and How to Win a Super Bell program today. We're very excited to have everybody. My name is Allison Lagano. I'm a VP at Tier 1 and also the programs lead for the PR Club. So if this is your first PR Club event, we put on, a few events a month, some virtual, some in person. We also have one next week that will be in person. But our biggest event, which everybody hopefully in the New England PR industry is very aware of, are the Bell Ringer Awards. So each year we put on a program just to talk a little bit about last year's winners, last year's finalists, what that process looks like, from the judges' perspective, just to kind of help guide everybody as you're pulling together your entries over the next month or so. So please, attendees, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in to either the chat, which comes directly to me, or the Q&A feature that you'll see on Zoom. The panelists and Michael will go through some questions that they've already discussed to start, and then we'll take some audience questions at the end. So we'll do introductions, and I will toss it over to you, Michael, to start.
All right, Allison, thanks very much. And thanks everybody here who's attending. I think we're going to have a really nice, fast-paced little masterclass in how to create a Bell entry and what goes into what are the secrets of success, if you will. And we've got three terrific panelists here to share their tips with you. These are people who have succeeded at this really intense and challenging competition. So I'm going to first let me tell you, I am the treasurer of the PR Club. Used to be the Publicity Club, the PR Club, and I've been on the board for just about 20 years. I also teach writing at Boston University in the College of Communication, and I'm also a freelance writer as well. So I've been in the PR community for a long, long time, and have had the privilege of sort of working closely behind the scenes for the Bell Ringer Awards. But Selena, can I turn it over to you for an introduction of yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So my name is Selena Fine. I'm an SVP at Tier 1 Partners, based here in Boston. And I have been in PR for coming up on 8 years. My time spent with Tier 1, and prior to that, I'm a former journalist working in TV news, where I spent 11 years at the Boston, NBC, and Fox affiliates.
Great. Emily, tell us about yourself, please.
Hi, so excited to be here. My name is Emily Hollenbeck. I'm an account director at Duffy Shanley. We are based in Providence, and I think this past year we celebrated 50 years here in Providence. So really excited to be here today.
Natalie?
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Marinaro. I'm a vice president at Shift Communications. We are also based out of Boston and have headquarters in San Francisco as well. I've been with Shift for about 10 years, and I lead the workplace technology practice. So my work primarily focuses on technologies that impact employers and employees. It's really nice to be here with everyone today. We absolutely love Bell Ringer season, so looking forward to conversations.
We love bell ringers. This is the intense part of bell ringer season, though, as I'm sure you all know, and attendees of this webinar know, because it's hard sometimes to pull together a good, or dare I say, great bell entry when you're also trying to keep your clients happy and get your regular work done. So this sometimes can be the thing you squeeze in at off hours, and it's a demand for sure. But that's kind of why people are here today, is to sort of figure out how to do this best and how to approach the challenge. And Selena, let me throw the first question over to you. We'll get to all of you for your reactions, but this first question, I'm actually going a little bit out of order from what we discussed earlier, just to keep you on your toes. But how do you choose which campaign or which project, or what do you decide this is Bell worthy? We want to enter this campaign. How do you go about that process?
I think it really comes down to storytelling, right? So looking at your campaign and the narrative that you have to tell, and like so for instance, this year our campaign that we submitted for the Bell Ringers was for the consumer campaign. And so, we had a narrative that was broader than just our client's business, that had societal implications. So from a storytelling perspective, we were able to really set up that tension, right? That
Sure.
really make broad consumers care and went really beyond just their business. And then that married with their metrics, like it drove tangible business results and, earned media results. So we had the proof in the pudding, if you will. So I think that that is really sort of the marriage of telling a very holistic story.
Excellent. So you really see it as what are the best storytelling opportunities? Great. Emily, what's your perspective on this?
Bell Ringer is such a fun time. Our agency, we usually gather around our big conference table. It's this giant circle, and we sit around and we debate the best of the best. Like, what drove great results for our client? What work do we feel super passionate about that we want to, as Lena said, tell that story to other people? But I think, as you look at your work over the past year, a good benchmark is to kind of see, what were last year's previous winners, and try to find a reference point for the category that you're entering for. Does it seem to, level up or match or exceed what has won in the past?
Yeah, I love what you said. When you sit around the table, you start with the results, which I think is just such a great way of thinking about this. It might be counterintuitive, but that's a great place to start. Natalie, what is your perspective on this at Shift?
Yeah, I echo exactly what Selena and Emily said as well. Sitting around the table, deciding which ones to present. It's always a lot of fun. It's challenging because, of course, we're really proud of all the programs and the client work that we do. I think for us, the barrier to which, campaigns that we enter, it is centered around results. What drove, Selena, to your point, not just hits, what drove actual business impact? How did we leverage data? How did we leverage insights and make a real valuable contribution to what a client's trying to do? I think the other element that we try to look at is how did we integrate other elements just beyond the earned portion, right? So any campaigns that have that paid, that social component to really reach every audience, those to us are just the most influential part, of what makes a great campaign. So we really want to make sure our campaigns touch every aspect and drive real tangible, meaningful results for businesses.
Thanks, Natalie. Let me stick with you on this one if I can. What are your favorite metrics? Okay, you're going to go beyond earned, but what are the ones that I guess maybe your favorites or ones you think are judges' favorites? What do you think resonates best in a Bell entry?
Sure. Yeah. I think, of course, the tangible broad results such as media hits, impressions, readership, that is going to stand out. That makes a very compelling case for why PR is important. But I think when you're looking at elevating and standing out and potentially going for a Super Bowl, it's really going to be those bigger results. It's going to be leads that a campaign generated, traffic, site visitors that improved overall brand awareness, things that help change a corporate narrative overall, position a company in a new category, maybe even pique the interest of investors. It's really big hitting goals and metrics that we're looking for there. Quite frankly, too, I think even before you put together a campaign, setting up programs in a way where you can look and track these results, that's the challenge and the start of where it all happens. So making sure that any program that you have really is tapped into your client's marketing and sales team from the start, that's going to allow you to track those results a lot better. So in my opinion, it's really those true business metrics that are going to stand out.
Yeah, that makes you much more of a partner with the business in that respect, doesn't it?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Emily, let me go back to you then. What are your favorite metrics? What do you like to highlight in a particular campaign entry for a bell ringer?
Yeah, I think Natalie really hit the nail on the head in terms of trying to show the robust different pieces of it, the pieces that showed contributions to the business level. But I think there are, in terms of, if you're entering in, say, the single category entry and you have a media hit that you're very proud of, well, how many key messages from your pitch to that media hit include, and is there a great way to tell that story within your entry? I think also that we like to include in some of our results too, or, what is that feedback that came from the client? Did they share, how this drove sales, or did they just share, an overwhelmingly praising, email that said this was an amazing program, so great to work with the team on it? I think all of those pieces just help elevate your campaign to the next level.
Yeah, that definitely rings true. Is sort of having that client praise that sort of pushes it over the top. That's always a great thing. Selena, what thoughts do you have for us on that?
Yeah, I would echo Natalie and Emily's sentiments, and I would say too, sometimes part of the challenge is, when it comes to business metrics, some of those tangible metrics would be even leaning into vanity metrics when needed too. So category awareness, likability, and consideration. I think that those all can really, cement the progress that the campaign or your submission drove. And then, like to Emily's point, as far as impressions, really doing that precision media and showcasing the strategy behind the verticals that you went after and how you intentionally drove progress within those verticals. Because obviously, every client has specific media that is very top of mind for them. So showing the impact there just shows the strategic thinking behind the campaign.
Yeah, that's a great point that you said, especially I want to pick up on at the end, the strategic impact. And let me ask you this, in some areas, maybe, research has fallen a little bit out of favor. There can be a real, compelling urge from the client, let's get going. And so you sort of dive into tactics pretty strongly. And that's because they see the tactics maybe a little bit sooner. Is research playing a big role in sort of a Super Bell worthy campaign? And Selena, let's go back and throw that to you.
I would say it's of key importance to the foundation of everything that you do with your campaign. It's one of the most important pieces, and I would never recommend skipping over that. And a lot of times the story that you want to communicate starts with an insight that is, revealed from a lot of that research. For instance, the campaign that we submitted was around the primetimification of women's sports, and the key insight we leaned into was less than 10% of all media coverage is devoted to women's sports, which shows a massive disparity. 90% was devoted to men's. And that was foundational to all of our storytelling for it. And it really showcased, the vicious cycle when it comes to women's sports and media equity. So it gave us the narrative that we leaned into consistently throughout the entire campaign. So I couldn't, over communicate the importance of research and leveraging those insights anymore.
Great, Selena. Thank you. Thank you. Emily, over to you. Is research at Duffy and Shanley, is that a big part of what you're doing with your campaigns? How does it factor into your entries?
Yeah, I love what Selena said in terms of, how you use it, just even to position or, grow your own campaign. And also, I think when entering too, using research in terms of what are other competitors doing within this industry? What have been CTRs in terms of other, again, I also work with a financial client in terms of finance or, consumer and things like that. So how does your campaign compare to other competitors is also a strong element to bring into your entry too.
Great. Natalie, what are you seeing at Shift?
Yeah, I agree. It's showing this situation and backing it with the research and findings that you have. It really brings your story to life. And it also helps you argue, the fact that your strategy and recommendation drove significant results. For this particular Super Bell that we're talking about from Shift, the research and audit for us was done on the back end. Before we started these campaigns, we did what we call green space audits, where we take a look in the entire universe of coverage to figure out within the need that the client had, what are the top 3 themes that we could really hone in on, just absolutely get aggressive and attack on. And it really helped. We were able to come to the client with, here are 3 things that we need to go out with. Here are 3 particular pieces of research that we've got to launch. And it works. And I think anytime you can show that in a bell ringer, again, it just shows that you have the right strategy, you have the right recommendation, and the results to prove it. So absolutely agree with making sure that your entry has that research and findings at the forefront.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Can I ask you, you're all veterans. You've submitted multiple entries for campaigns, and some win, some don't. What do you think raises an entry, above the crowd? And let's face it, we work in a competitive and crowded industry with lots of talented people, across New England and across our industry. How do you rise above? How do you get that cream to go to the top? What is it about an entry that you think separates it from the crowd? And Natalie, maybe you could take us through that thought process.
Yeah, sure. I think that at the heart of it, it is about storytelling, how to put
Mhm.
together a really impactful story. And, to Selena's point, it starts with that dramatic flair of what is happening in the world. How do we connect our client to it? How do we convey that the work they're trying to do to solve this problem? And then from there, the things that we've talked about, what type of insights and research did we use to inform this campaign to help us reach those goals, to solve these challenges? To me, that demonstrates that you are sort of at that next level of thinking. And then the results, you just really need to speak for themselves. That's going to be the business results that you're looking for. How did we go above and beyond to really help the client solve this problem, just beyond earned media hits? So I think when you look at those elements, coupled with the fact that we didn't just rely on earned media, we also introduced other integrated elements to our programs, whether it was paid, social, surveys, and research. It really shows that you were taking a wider, broader look at how PR can solve problems for businesses. So I think when you incorporate the research, the storytelling, and making sure that your results just go above and beyond just some of those vanity PR metrics, that really elevates and helps you stand out.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks. Emily, Duffy and Shanley is sort of, got a very well-earned reputation in this whole competition. You guys have consistently produced so many great entries over the years. What is it that what's your secret sauce? What is it that you see that elevates an entry, above the great ordinary to super bell worthy kind of level?
I love how Natalie put it. It's really just defining that situation. It's with that storytelling and make sure that your results just kind of go above and beyond and really delivered on the business objectives. I will also say that, when it comes to bell ringers, we take a kind of think tank approach. Someone might work on it and add their thoughts, then another team member will add their thoughts. So it's really making sure it touches several hands within the team to make sure we're telling that story in a way that it's meant to be told.
Yeah. Selena, your thoughts?
I would just echo everything Natalie and Emily said. I really do think, I think being tight in your storytelling too is very helpful, right? Because there are so many campaign entries that the judges are reading, but setting the stage with, that narrative around why should your reader care about this? Like, what is the tension in the upfront? What's the problem that's bigger than just your account that this campaign was, working to drive progress in? And then how does it strategically align to your client's business objectives? Like showing how everything ladders up to what's most important to them, what their brand's core purpose is, so that everything knits together to tell that really holistic story. And then the results, right? You have to have the results that break through. So communicating in a very concise way how the campaign is differentiated from that perspective, I think is what really makes a campaign entry sing and communicates really how their business meant, buzz, right? So like how they entered culture, if it's a consumer facing narrative.
Sure. That makes sense. Let me start to move now we've done a lot of work strategically, but let's think tactically now. And because I'm thinking of, people attending this webinar going, okay, that's all good and strategic, but I got to actually create this thing. Help me. So let me start with, how much time are you devoting to a bell entry? How much time should I allocate to this? Can I pull this together on the last day of the, late entry deadline, week, or, how are you approaching that? What do you have a process, a methodology? Who gets involved? How does that work? Do you start with the account manager? Are they the point person, or is it a VP that's sort of, the VP of bells for your agency? Okay, Natalie, can we start with you on that?
Sure. I think you would probably want me to say not to wait to the last minute. No, I'm kidding. We never do that though. Yeah. I think personally from Shift's approach, we want the team involved. That's every team member. They've played a significant role in actually executing on the strategy and the campaign. And and it's their time to tell the story. Of course, we have oversight where, we've got people editing and reviewing and making suggestions, but ultimately at the start of it's really what are the results that we want to show, who's writing sort of the summary, who's tackling the oversight of the results. The biggest part, the biggest time I think is spent on getting all the results together for us. It's really going back through making them visually compelling. I would say time spent 3 to 4 hours, typically that's going to vary. It could be different for Selena and Emily, of course, depending on what the process is at the agency, but the biggest time is spent collecting the results. I would also say, don't wait till the last minute. Give yourself time, start early, so that way you can come back to the story. You're probably gonna not get it right the first few times, but if you give yourself a few days to just sort of chip away at it here and there, that's gonna allow you to take a step back and tell the story, to Selena's point, really concisely in a way that's compelling.
Yeah, chipping away is a great strategy in lots of things where you've got a big task in front of you. So that makes a lot of sense. Emily, how does Duffy and Shanley approach this?
Yeah, similar to Natalie, the whole team gets involved when it comes to writing the bells. I would say too, if sometimes it's easier to start from the end rather than the beginning. So if you want to look at your results first and think about, okay, this is what we earned, then how do we tell the story in a way that really showcases that? So sometimes it's helpful to look at what the results were and then take a step backward in terms of that too. I will say, if you do need the extra time, as I have, it is okay to enter late. And I'm so thankful that the PR Club offers that late entry fee, because I've definitely used that. So just make sure you take your time, make sure all the team that needs to see it has seen it, reviewed it, and that your story's coming together the way that you want it to.
Great. Selena, love to hear your thoughts on this.
The only thing I would add would be sometimes it's really helpful to have someone who's not as close to the work review to make sure, because you can be so close to it that, it's really helpful to have an outside perspective come in and take a look and make sure you're telling the story in a holistic way and not like leaning into any one part, and overweighting there or something. So I think having that outside perspective is really helpful, but I mean, they take love and care to come together, but it's so worth it in the end.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, TLC can sort of pull it across the finish line, which is nice. We have two questions that have come in during our webinar here today, and they're both fairly similar, and they actually sort of overlap with the question I have. So I'm going to kind of munge them all together here and try to come up with this. And the first person writes, reflecting back to the first time you or your team or your client submitted a bills, what's the best piece of advice you could give? And as another person phrased it, if you had a golden rule to keep in mind when creating your entry, what would it be? And Selena, this is going to be the pop quiz for you. So I'm going to throw it over to you first, if you would.
Yeah, I would say that the golden rule is really, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but storytelling is key. So really illustrating why somebody who's not a stakeholder in any way, shape, or form would care about this is key, and keeping it tight. And then also, I'm going to give you 3 reasons. I like being as visual as possible too. And I think if I were a judge and I were reading, so many of these, that would just help keep me engaged. I prefer doing decks versus just like Word documents, which can be so dense and tough to get through. So I think trying to lay everything out in a way that's as easy for the reader to navigate is super helpful as well.
Excellent.
That would be my
Thank
first
you.
one too. It was kind of both, 2 for 1.
That's great. It's a mixed question anyway, so a mixed answer makes sense. Emily, what do you think? What's your golden rule?
You know what? The devil is in the details. Make sure you really read through the guidelines. Make sure you are answering the questions that they have wanted you to answer within your entry. Annette, she's our president, and she's read so many of these entries that have come in, and she said you would be surprised by the number of people who have entered in a category that's not really appropriate for their campaign. So if you have questions on that, make sure you reach out to the PR Club and ask, I have this, What category do you think? Want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So it's really make sure you pay attention to all of the small details because that could get you disqualified very quickly.
Yeah, category selection is crucial. I can definitely speak from experience on that. Natalie, what's your thought? What's your golden rule? What's the one thing?
Yeah, the category recommendation, Emily, is so important. Getting that right, is just so critical. So making sure that one, you've picked the right campaign category to be in, I think that's where you start. I'm going to go back to the results because it really should be your barometer for if you think it's compelling, and it has to be those results that go beyond just earned media hits. To me, it is something that stands out in any campaign, your ability to actually demonstrate ROI to a client, actual business impact, and how you've changed their business, changed their ability to do business. So I think as long as you keep that at the heart of your story, and have results that speak to it, you're really not going to go wrong.
Excellent, thank you. And let me add to all of what you ladies have said here, which I've been a judge for the Bells for at least 10 years. And that is the one thing is you see a lot of entries that are well done, just real solid, good blocking and tackling, really solid results. And you go, nicely done. Is it bell worthy? And again, you're working for outsized results, things that are maybe extraordinary is a tough word to use, but yeah, maybe extraordinary results that are really compelling and really interesting or attacked in a new way. That I think gets judging attention. As much as the ordinary campaign will please your client and get you moving forward in great ways. You're looking for that little extra that sort of takes it above to the land of a Super Bell, if you will. We got another question that came in, so we're filled with questions, which is nice. And the question, I'll just read it as it is. Should agencies let the budget or the client name hinder them from submitting for a Super Bell? And I only think I partially understand this question, but Natalie, you're shaking your head pretty good here pretty quickly. So I'd like you to start with you if we could.
Yeah, I think the question is more around if you have a campaign that was sort of done on a shoestring budget, not a very well-known client, should you submit? Absolutely 100% yes. The first bell ringer that I submitted many years ago, it was also a Super Bowl finalist, and pennies. This was a startup company, in fact. No one knew who this brand was, and it went back to the mission of the campaign, the purpose. It had a deep tie to solving gaps in hiring talent for the workforce. So it was more about the story. I am personally biased in that if you have a client with a smaller budget that is little known and you have these fantastic results, that is just phenomenal that you were able to achieve that. It is easier to get results when you have that brand recognition or you have $1 million budget, of course. But in my opinion, it's absolutely entries that stand out when you do more with much less. So don't let that deter you.
100% in agreement. Yeah, it's more fun, I think, from a PR practitioner's perspective to get that, as opposed to happily benefiting from a big tailwind that you get from a budget or a brand. But Emily, any thoughts to share?
Yeah, I think that is, echoing just what Natalie said, it just really highlights your creativity and tenacity as a team to deliver those results. So I think those entries, absolutely enter them.
Yeah. It's almost, not only should it not hinder you, it should almost encourage you perhaps to take that shot. Selena, I'll give you a chance to join the amen chorus here on this one, but what do you think?
I think all of the above. I agree that oftentimes if you have a budget that's on a shoestring, it's that much more of a challenge to tell, a really differentiated story. And that's where, to Emily's point, the creativity can really come across and your strategic chops and like how you help that client punch above their weight is really something that can shine with that.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, we've reached our half-hour limit here, but I'll just throw one more sort of open-ended question. Any final thoughts that you want to share with our audience and live and recorded about how you approach a Super Bowl or project entry. Any final thoughts? Let me frame it this way. You're at your favorite little watering hole, and your colleague from another agency who's new to the biz comes in and sits down here and say, "Oh, I got to do my bell ringers." What's the one thing you'd say to them as a real peer-to-peer friend, not, polished and this is what you must do, but hey, look out for this, or make sure you do this, or don't let that happen. Any thoughts that you would add to that? And I don't know who to throw this one out to, so I'll let you guys decide how you want to answer this one.
I think it just comes down to telling that holistic story, like that 360-degree view. So like setting up the story really well, showing the strategy behind the story, showing, I think Natalie, you mentioned this before, but showing the integrated approach, right? There's paid oftentimes, your owned channels, social, all of it like plays into it. So you're telling a holistic story from that perspective too. And then showcasing how it's differentiated. How is it different from everything else we've seen there? And how does it matter to more than just, your clients and their business? Like what's the broad implications that you can showcase? And keep
I
it
like that.
tight.
I like that, Selena. I like that. Sorry to cut you off there. Yeah, I like that because what's the impact? I know we all think it's great, but what does the real world out there think of what we've done? That's a nice point. Natalie, what do you think?
Don't let it intimidate you. This is your time to tell the story about what you've done for a client. It should be that simple. I think making sure that you keep it light, keep it creative, allow yourself the room to just tell a good story, and don't start late. That is certainly something to keep in mind, but don't let it intimidate you. You can do it.
So as soon as you finish watching this webinar, get going.
Go do
get
it.
Going. Yeah. Emily, I'll let you play us off.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what they say. And I would say if you're on the fence, you got great results, your client thought you did, but should you enter it? Just enter it. I mean, the more people who enter into the bell ringers, the more that we're competing against the best of the best. And you will be surprised at how well your work shines within all the categories. So if you are on the fence, just tackle it after this webinar, get started, and it'll be great.
Terrific. Thank you. Allison, I'm going to throw it over to you, but not before I say, Selena, Emily, Natalie, thank you so much for your time today. What a great conversation this was. And I hope, and I'm sure our attendees have found real value in this. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And if you want to learn a little bit more about the campaigns that these ladies did submit and were Super Bowl finalists last year, you can go to prclub.org. We have write-ups on the programs tab about each of those campaigns. And then I want to just remind everybody, because I know we've been talking about deadlines. So the early bird entry deadline is actually this Friday, the 9th. Our regular deadline is March 8th. And then the late deadline, which there will be an additional fee, is Friday, March 15th. So just make sure you have those deadlines down, and then we will hopefully see everybody at the awards ceremony, which will be on June 6th this summer. So thank you
Great.
very much, everybody, and we'll talk to you soon.